effort to disprove that she's an unlikable bully brat who did not deserve any of the negative press she received, Blake Lively acts like an unlikable bully brat who cannot believe any of that negative press could possibly be genuine. It was you. It was all you who made me unable to stand you.
Blake Lively built her entire case around one promise: the existence of a smoking gun that would silence critics and prove she was the victim of a ruthless smear campaign. For months, she told the world that Justin Baldoni and his PR strategist, Jed Wallace, were secretly plotting against her. The proof, she insisted, was locked away in Wallace's signal messages. These private communications, she claimed, would expose a conspiracy designed to destroy her reputation. But here's the shocking twist: that proof doesn't exist. Those messages, the very heart of her strategy, have vanished into thin air. And without them, Blake's lawsuit is standing on shaky ground, leaving her entire narrative vulnerable to collapse. Could this be the turning point where the victim card slips away, exposing her as the aggressor instead? Or is Hollywood about to watch a star unravel her own case in real time? One thing is clear: Blake promised the world a smoking gun. Now she's left holding nothing but smoke. And the fallout from this revelation is already spiraling far beyond what anyone expected.
Ongoing apparent feud between her and Taylor Swift, and what I think is going to happen when coverage of their rift increases when Taylor Swift likely has songs coming out about Blake Lively and the friendship ending. Okay, as we know, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift, by all accounts, are no longer friends, and Taylor is releasing this album that talks about this song ruin the friendship and more. By the way, I will say this: I'm not a Swiftie, just so you guys know, but I try to cover things as fairly as possible. And strongly seems to reference Blake. We know that there's been the extortion attempt and more. Now, what's really interesting is that this PR article came out, and I don't think that anyone's discussed this particular aspect of this PR article, which not only talks about the fact that Blake supposedly removed Taylor from her guest list, which, let's be real,
Blake's legal team spent months fighting to access Jed Wallace's private signal chats, convinced those messages were the key to proving their claims. Her lawyers painted the picture of an elaborate digital conspiracy, where Wallace coordinated with Baldoni to fuel an online smear campaign. If they could just pry open those chats, the entire case would tip in her favor. But that's not all. In court, Wallace revealed something nobody saw coming. His Signal account was set to auto-delete messages after being read. Every single text Lively believed would save her case was gone. Irretrievable, unrecoverable, vanished. In an instant, the very evidence she had promised the public as her trump card evaporated into the digital void. Think about the optics here. Blake spent months insisting these communications were her salvation. Now, instead of damning Baldoni, they've exposed a gaping hole in her strategy. A smoking gun that turned out to be nothing but smoke. For a jury, for the press, and for Hollywood insiders watching closely, that collapse isn't just embarrassing, it's devastating. And for Blake, the timing couldn't be worse.
Hacking Blake Lively and claiming that she was issued a subpoena by Blake's team. Blake Lively's team has now come out to say that's not true. They never issued Megyn Kelly a subpoena, nor did they issue her company one. In a video where Megyn says that Blake Lively is a bully, a brat, a narcissist, an elitist, etc., she goes on to say that she was now able to let us know she was issued a subpoena by Blake Lively's team. However, that's not true. In the video, Megyn claims that Blake's team was going after her and her team for confidential and proprietary materials that they used for any and all stories about Blake Lively.
Faced with the disappearing message fiasco, the court had to decide how far Blake could go in her evidence hunt. Her team demanded everything: full client lists, unredacted communications, and unlimited access to Wallace's records. But the judge drew a firm line. Wallace was only required to provide information up until February 2025, cutting off the broad fishing expedition Blake's lawyers tried to launch. It gets even worse. This restriction didn't just shrink her access, it sent a message. The court essentially signaled that Blake's demands were excessive, punitive, and bordering on harassment. Judges hate when discovery is weaponized, and this ruling suggested they were losing patience with her tactics. For Blake, the optics are brutal. Instead of looking like a wronged star searching for justice, she risks coming across as a relentless aggressor, grasping at straws. And in the world of Hollywood legal battles, perception is just as damaging as the actual verdict. By limiting her scope, the court not only weakened her immediate strategy, but also hinted at skepticism toward her entire case. And for a celebrity banking on courtroom drama to rebuild her image, that kind of signal could be catastrophic.
Blake's team, however, came out with a statement saying at no point in this litigation did Miss Lively serve a subpoena on Megyn Kelly. The only subpoena they issued that has any connection to Megyn Kelly is this company, Red Seat Ventures. Now, Red Seat Ventures did work with Megyn Kelly at one point, but they don't any longer. They were obtained by Fox Corporation back in February, and as you know, Megyn Kelly no longer works with Fox. Red Seat Ventures represents a ton of big names, Dr. Phil, Bill O'Reilly, as well as Megyn Kelly, but they also represent media outlets like the New York Post.
When the signal messages disappeared, Blake's legal team didn't slow down. Instead, they expanded their attack, dragging more names into the chaos. Journalists, commentators, and influencers suddenly found themselves caught in her legal net. Megyn Kelly, Perez Hilton, and Candace Owens were just a few of the high-profile figures targeted. Smaller YouTubers and critics were also swept up, many blindsided by subpoenas demanding private communications, emails, or account data. Things take an unexpected turn. These subpoenas weren't uniform. Some demanded every scrap of correspondence. Others focused narrowly on Google and YouTube records. But the underlying message was unmistakable. If you dared to criticize Blake Lively, you could end up with a subpoena in your inbox. The chilling effect rippled instantly across media circles. Suddenly, speaking out about Blake wasn't just a gossip column risk, it was a legal liability. By stretching her battle beyond Justin Baldoni and Jed Wallace, Blake blurred the line between defending her reputation and weaponizing the courts to intimidate critics. But in doing so, she also exposed herself to an even bigger backlash. Because in Hollywood, when you go after the press doesn't just roll over. They fight back harder.
Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni and his team for an alleged PR smear campaign and retaliation, so it only makes sense that they would issue a subpoena to the Red Seat Ventures, who represents people like Megyn Kelly. Megyn, who's obviously feeling left out because she didn't receive a subpoena, tried to say that she was being targeted by Blake Lively and issued one. When she was called out about this is the statement she responded with.
The subpoena storm hit its peak when Megyn Kelly fired back. Known for her no-holds-barred commentary, Kelly didn't hesitate to go public. She blasted Blake Lively as a narcissistic bully and claimed she'd been directly subpoenaed. The headlines were instant and brutal. And here's where it gets wild. Lively's team scrambled to respond. They issued a carefully worded statement denying Kelly had ever been subpoenaed personally. Technically, they argued, the papers were served to her former production company, Red Seat Ventures, not Kelly herself. But in practical terms, the distinction meant nothing. Kelly's show and name were listed, her lawyers were forced to respond, and the burden fell squarely on her shoulders. Instead of weakening Kelly, the move made her louder. She doubled down, exposing exactly what the subpoena demanded and how it named her specifically. For the public, it was confirmation that Lively's team was playing word games to avoid embarrassment. What should have been a quiet, behind-the-scenes maneuver had now exploded into front-page drama. And in trying to silence one of the loudest voices in media, Blake may have guaranteed her case would be debated on every platform from cable news to TikTok.
Typical Blake Lively, once again trying to avoid embarrassment for her own inappropriate behavior. She subpoenaed the company, not her company, the company. The company that until recently employed me and my show staff, so admits she doesn't work with them any longer. Asking for documents, communications, contracts, etc. This is typical in litigation. This is what Blake Lively would want from Red Seat Ventures.
Megyn Kelly's pushback revealed something deeper. Blake's legal strategy only seemed to work against those without the power to resist. Every time a major target fought back, Kelly, Owens, Hilton, Lively's team scrambled to retreat, walking back claims or narrowing their scope. The reason this happened will shock you. It wasn't about uncovering truth or seeking justice. It looked like intimidation, pure and simple. Smaller YouTubers, bloggers, and content creators, those who lacked the resources for expensive lawyers, were left struggling under the weight of subpoenas. The pattern was clear: silence the vulnerable, but back off when the powerful bite back. For Hollywood insiders watching from the sidelines, this wasn't a good look. Instead of projecting strength, Blake's team appeared weak, reactive, and disorganized. Worse, it framed her less as a victim of a smear campaign and more as the aggressor, misusing her star power to punish critics. And in the court of public opinion, that perception is lethal. Fans who once rallied to her defense began to wonder if the smear campaign narrative was just spin. And if Blake loses both the courtroom and the crowd, she risks something even more damaging than a legal defeat: irreparable reputation collapse. While Blake's team was scrambling to contain the subpoena backlash, Justin Baldoni quietly shifted the narrative. He argued that the supposed smear campaign never existed in the first place. His proof? A simple timeline. Most critics hadn't even mentioned Blake Lively until after she filed her initial lawsuit. The negative commentary didn't precede her claims. It followed them. And listen to this. Baldoni's countersuit came packed with documentation that contradicted Blake's allegations, flipping the story entirely. Instead of being targeted by a conspiracy, Baldoni positioned himself as the one under attack, forced to defend against false claims. For the court, the logic was damning. If the criticism started only after Blake went public, how could it have been part of a pre-planned smear? The conspiracy theory began to collapse under its own weight. And with Baldoni presenting receipts while Blake's supposed smoking gun disappeared, the scales of credibility tipped fast. In Hollywood, public opinion matters almost as much as legal rulings. And in this battle, Baldoni was looking more like the wronged party, while Blake appeared to be the architect of her own downfall. The courtroom drama was messy enough, but the real danger for Blake Lively was outside those walls. By forcing Jed Wallace to turn over his client list, she risked exposing some of Hollywood's most powerful names, celebrities who had trusted him to handle their crises quietly. Things get even messier from here. If those names surface, the backlash could be catastrophic. Hollywood runs on loyalty and secrecy. Stars don't forgive easily when one of their own risks dragging them into a scandal they never asked for. Instead of Blake being seen as a victim, she suddenly looked like a liability, a risk no one wanted to associate with. And that perception spreads fast. In an industry where reputation is currency, Blake's aggressive legal tactics may end up costing her allies she can't afford to lose. Producers, co-stars, and even brand partners pay attention when someone starts burning bridges in public. So, while Blake fought Baldoni in court, the larger war was being waged in Hollywood boardrooms and back-channel phone calls. And there, whispers were already starting. Is Blake Lively too dangerous to work with? It wasn't just Hollywood watching Blake's legal battles spiral, it was fans too. And they started noticing something unusual. For the first time in years, Ryan Reynolds skipped his traditional birthday post celebrating Blake. That absence spoke louder than words. What came next surprised everyone. Rumors swirled that the lawsuits weren't just exhausting her professional circle, they were straining her marriage too. And when whispers about bot-inflated social media followers began surfacing, the cracks in her image grew wider. Blake, who had accused others of manipulating numbers, was now accused of the same tactic herself. Suddenly, the public narrative shifted. No longer the victim of a smear campaign, she began to look like someone orchestrating her own downfall. A star desperate to control the story, but losing control in every direction. And when fans start doubting authenticity, the damage sticks. For years, Blake and Ryan had been Hollywood's golden couple, celebrated for their banter and picture-perfect partnership. Now, that image looked shaky, and the silence around it only fueled speculation. At the heart of all this chaos is one undeniable fact. The smoking gun Blake Lively promised never existed. Without it, her legal case stands on unstable ground, surrounded by contradictions and collapsing credibility. Judges don't reward fishing expeditions, juries don't trust empty claims, and fans don't rally behind a narrative that keeps falling apart. And it doesn't stop there. This case isn't just about Blake and Justin anymore, it's about how celebrities weaponize lawsuits to silence critics, control narratives, and punish dissent. If Blake somehow wins, The precedent could embolden other stars to subpoena journalists and creators who dare to speak out. If she loses, the backlash could leave her reputation in ruins, remembered less as a victim and more as an aggressor who misplayed her hand. Either way, the fallout extends far beyond one actress. It's a test case for Hollywood power, money, and the price of trying to control the story. And as the public watches, one question lingers. Did Blake Lively just destroy her own credibility in the very fight she hoped would save it?